Okay, dudes and dudettes, welcome back. I'm going to jump into the characters from George Orwell's Animal Farm. Now, these are in no particular order, but these are my very personal notes for my reading of the text. So we have Mr. Jones. He's a human. He's the original runner of the farm. A good quote to summarize him is the quote that introduces him in the text, which is, "Too drunk to remember to shut the potholes." So we can see right from the start that this is the animal's impressions of the humans, and that impression is not very impressive. He's the first antagonist of the story, and he tries several times throughout the text to overpower the animals and reclaim the farm, always to no avail. Next we have Old Major, aka the Willingdon Beauty. Now this is the first character to which we are exposed. He is a middle white boar, 12 years old, and has given birth to 400 pigs. Yowie. A good quote to summarize his character is that he was so highly regarded on the farm that everyone was quite ready to lose an hour's sleep in order to hear what he had to say. There's many rich quotes about Old Major during his short time in the text, all of which attest to his grand character. But to put him in terms of symbolism, he is a symbol in the text of animalism and what it was always intended to be. He represents the ideal animal, the ideal philosophies, and for a significant portion of the text, his character is the guiding force behind a lot of the animal's actions. It's just a shame that Napoleon's kind of an ass and twists Major's dreams and aspirations to his own ends. Then we have Snowball, one of the young boars that takes a leadership role after Major's death. In the text it says, "Snowball was a more vivacious pig than Napoleon, quicker in speech and more inventive, but was not considered to have the same depth of character." So right from the outset we get the impression that Snowball is a very attractive pig, very likable, but his pitfall is that his presence of character isn't as strong as Napoleon. He tries to be a democratic leader during his time on the farm, and it's evident through all his work on the windmill and on the farm that he is a diligent worker. He's not just a boss, but he's a real leader that gets in the muck with everyone else. A good example of this is during the Battle of the Cowshed, during which Snowball leads the animals against the humans and even sustains a gunshot wound on the back. He's honest, he's humble, he's one of the animals that works harder than any of the others to realize Old Major's dreams and aspirations about an animal utopia. Next we have Napoleon, another of the young boars that took a leadership role after the death of Old Major. However, he never did anything noteworthy during Snowball's presence. He only disagrees with everything that Snowball says. He is the main antagonist of the text, and even from his introduction in text we get that impression. Orwell writes, "Napoleon was a large, rather fierce-looking Berkshire boar, the only Berkshire on the farm, not much of a talker, but with a reputation for getting his own way." So right there in that quote, we know that he doesn't communicate much, but it's widely known that he finds other ways of carrying out his agenda. He is kind of suspicious. At an early point in the text, Napoleon takes young puppies away from their mothers and educates them privately in a secluded loft. It's only when Snowball gains the support of the farm in the windmill debate that Napoleon sticks his trained dogs onto Snowball and expels him from the farm. After which Napoleon becomes a dictator and systematically abolishes every trace of Snowball's presence on the farm. Now that's an example of that opening quote about Napoleon getting things done his own way, not through communication and democracy, but through power, through deception, through manipulation, the qualities of a bad dictator. Now next we have Squealer, and this is Napoleon's lackey, kind of his right-hand pig. He's described as a small, fat pig with very round cheeks, twinkling eyes, nimble movements, and a shrill voice. He was a brilliant talker. Now another really good quote is, "The others said of Squealer that he could turn black into white." So this is all evident throughout the novel because Squealer acts as a mouthpiece for Napoleon. He is always the one speaking and rewriting history, and it's the way he speaks that convinces all the animals that he's telling the truth. In that way, his name becomes quite fitting. Anytime the animals come anywhere close to questioning him, he often exaggerates the possibility of Jones's return to the farm in order to threaten the animals into submission. We have Bluebell, Jessie, and Pincher. Now these are the three dogs on the farm. They don't appear very often in the text, but it is the offspring of Bluebell and Jessie, a total of 9 puppies, that Napoleon takes away and educates to be his personal bodyguards when they're older. These are the dogs that give birth to Napoleon's means of overpowering every other animal on the farm. There's Boxer and Clover, the 2 cart horses on the farm. Now from the start we recognize them both to be beautiful, humble, compassionate creatures. One of the early lines in the text reads, "They came in together, walking very slowly and settling down their vast hairy hooves with great care, lest there should be some small animal concealed in the straw." Clover was a stout motherly mare approaching middle life who had never quite got her figure back after her 4th foal. Boxer was an enormous beast nearly 18 hands high and as strong as any 2 ordinary horses put together. A white stripe down his nose gave him a somewhat stupid appearance, and in fact he was not of first-rate intelligence, but he was universally respected for his steadiness of character and tremendous powers of work. Now, the reason I wanted to read those quotes out in particular is because they're a good example of something I want to give you a tip on. Now, it's something they teach you in writing courses, that when you're introducing characters, especially important characters in a narrative, you need to make them unique in some way. You need to make them three-dimensional characters, even at the start. That way, the reader has a clear view of the character, and you can avoid making 2D characters that are easily forgettable. So my tip to you is, in the future, with any reading, if you read about a new character that has a few lines dedicated to them, pay attention, because often those characters will grow to have significant impacts on the story, and those first few lines actually tell you a lot about their character. Next we have Muriel, which is a white goat, a literate reader, perhaps the best on the farm, up there with Benjamin. He is often with Clover, and when Clover addresses the barn with the 7 commandments, it's often Muriel that reads them to her because she herself can't. We have Benjamin, which is a donkey, described as the oldest animal on the farm and the worst tempered. He seldom talked, and when he did, it was usually to make some cynical remark. Another quote is, "Alone among the animals on the farm, he never laughed." So throughout the text, Benjamin is indeed cynical and doesn't really care much about what happens on the farm. It's only around the time the Boxer is taken away that he becomes more active and more passionate. He's the one that tells the animals that Boxer is being taken away to the horse slaughterer, and he's the one that comforts Clover in Boxer's absence. Next we have Molly. Now in the text, she's described as a foolish, pretty white hare, and she appears to have a proclivity for ribbons, even after she is told by Major at the start of the text that the ribbons are a symbol of her subjugation, proof of her slavery. She often avoids work on the farm by disappearing, and it is later revealed that she was frequently meeting with a human. After she is found out by Clover, she disappears from the farm altogether and is later seen to be becoming a pet to a human who dresses her with ribbons and feeds her lump sugar. That slut. Next we have Moses, who is described as a tame raven, and Mr. Jones is a special pet. He is also described as a spy and a tale-bearer, but he was also a clever talker. He's not seen much in the text, but when he is, he often describes a place called Sugar Candy Mountain, which is his rendition of heaven, where it is Sunday 7 days a week, clover was in season all year round, and lump sugar and linseed cake grew on the hedges. What's interesting is that he disappears from the farm when Jones does, but he returns later in the text, seemingly randomly, so make of that what you will. So there you go. Those are some of the big characters as well as some of the small ones, and they were just from my notes and my reading of the text. I hope those notes helped, because during your subsequent readings of the text, those are the characters to look out for and analyze. Again, please rate this video if you found it helpful, and for more content, keep following this series on George Orwell's Animal Farm, or for other content, refer back to Learning Bird and check out all the other stuff the site has to offer. See you next time.